What's happening, everybody? The Poets here. I hope you're doing well and staying safe. And today's video is all about the PC market and a particular review that I've been looking forward to. Now, when it comes to my reviews, I give my honest opinion on something, and therefore sometimes it takes me a while to really form that opinion because I really want to get in there to test a piece of hardware, to really see if it's reliable, you know, the ins and outs and all that good stuff. And I've been doing this with this particular PC for a while now. Now, let's step back. Let's talk about the hardware market, the GPU market in particular. We all know right now that if you want to get a GPU, it's very hard to do. You know, you can't just walk into a Micro Center and be like, hey, I'll take this GPU that I wanted as I'm driving to Micro Center. It doesn't quite work like that right now. So if you want, say, an RTX 3070, either it's like a lottery system on Newegg, or you have to get to Best Buy really early in the morning, or get to Micro Center in the morning and do their lottery system. It's just not easy. So if you want to go to eBay right now and get an RTX 3070 in particular, you're going to be paying $1,200, $1,300 right now for a brand new one, which is just stupid, just flat out stupid. So please don't be paying those prices. But if you do want a system that, one, looks nice, two, has an 11700KF processor, three, has an RTX 3070, four, is custom water cooled, and five, all for just $2,049, I may have found the system for you, as long as it's in stock, like every other PC manufacturer. But this one is the iBUYPOWER Element CL. And yeah, spoilers, I like it a lot. Let's get into this. Now, in order for iBUYPOWER to meet this price point, they're using fittings like this. Now, this is all in the case, and they actually do slide up and down. So the screws will go here, so they're able to adjust this fitting in order to make it easier on their assembly line. Additionally, they're not screwing anything down with the actual fittings for the tubing. So these actually press down. So this locks in the tubing. So like this PETG tubing that they're using right here, when I press this in, it kind of stops. I press this down and then the tubing goes in all the way. I release it and now it's locked in, very, very tight. So that's not going anywhere. And if they need to make any adjustments, just press this down again and this slides right out. So it's very easy compared to a lot of other fittings where you actually have to do a lot of screwing, deal with multiple, you know, gaskets or O-rings, whatever type of fitting you're actually using. I think this is actually pretty darn brilliant for an assembly line to keep costs low for the end consumer. Now, when it comes to the CPU water block, it's the same thing. They have screws right here so they can make adjustments left to right so that the tubing can be pretty much as exact as they need it to be, causing less production time to cut tubing to the exact size. So they can actually roughly get it right and then just adjust as needed, which is pretty darn cool. And then, of course, it's the same thing with these fittings here. Press it down, press down like that, now it's locked in. That's not going anywhere. So that is really darn cool from an assembly line standpoint, as well as just keeping costs low. This is aluminum, that also helps to keep costs low, but most pre-builts that have custom water cooling are aluminum. Copper is more for custom water cooling, or if you're going to do it on your own. It costs a lot more, it is much heavier, it does a better job of transferring heat. But many people are familiar with AIOs, and most AIOs are all made of aluminum. So this is giving you the same, if not better, performance of a AIO, because this is actually a custom loop, which is kind of cool. Now, lastly, we have the GPU water block here. Now this thing is actually kind of nice. I like this design, all right? And you can see here, this is the aluminum, and this is what is actually cooling the entire GPU, which is nice. And it's the same concept here with these fittings, right? So that's not going anywhere. This one obviously doesn't have the adjustments because once the GPU is in, it's not going to move anywhere. So you can basically build the rest of the system around the GPU. So this is pretty darn smart how they did this. So here we have the iBUYPOWER Element CL. So let's go ahead and turn this on. So first thing you'll notice is plenty of RGB for most people's liking. There's even space to add RGB strips if you want to do that, to customize it a little further if you want. Most people will notice right away that there is no backplate on the GPU. Kind of taste and preferences if you want to take the time to find one that's compatible. There are a lot of third-party ones that will fit this perfectly fine. This is a fairly large Psu Shroud right here, and they do a lot of good cable management going right into here to try to keep things clean. You'll notice here that the power for the motherboard as well as the USB 3.0 kind of wrap around to the back pretty neatly, and then all of the cables for the fans are done very well in terms of its cable management too. The fluid they're using is clear fluid, and because this is an aluminum loop, custom loop, mind you, you can actually drain this and replace it with any fluid that you want. So just make sure that it's fully compatible with, aluminum loops, but that should not be a problem at all. This model does come with 2 sticks of RAM, so you can always add 2 more to get to 32 gigs if you need it. And with this 11700KF processor, perfectly fine for gaming, perfectly fine for a lot of different styles of like 1080p, even 1440p video editing. And of course, with this being a 3070, you can get a lot of video editing done with this as well, especially if you're using applications that need CUDA as well. This device right here is actually the pump. This is what's pumping all of the fluid throughout this entire custom loop right here. It's integrated into the distribution plate, so this whole front section is actually one big distribution plate, and it's actually integrated into the radiator right here on the side. One downside to the internet speeds of this thing was this Wi-Fi card. Now I noticed right away that the Wi-Fi speeds in this system were relatively slow compared to the rest of the PCs on my network, so I ended up adding this Asus Wi-Fi 5 PCIe card, and it actually tripled my Wi-Fi speeds. So if your Wi-Fi router is kind of far from this system, this is an easy fix. I think this is like 60 bucks right now. Very easy, and you can see that you have plenty of PCIe slots in order for any type of expandability that you want to do. One thing you'll notice, because of the integrated radiator on the side here, it will be somewhat difficult for somebody that has never done water cooling in the past to actually upgrade this loop, especially because this front distro plate is pretty proprietary. Now many of them are proprietary for different types of PC cases, but this one is not going to be one you're going to find a lot of third-party support for. As you can tell, the front of the case is highly reflective, so it always made it pretty difficult to take some good pictures of it. But you do get to see this nice little meter here, which is kind of cool, and all the holes to actually look inside the loop. In terms of I/O, you get your standard mic input, headphones, 2 USB 3.0s, and your power button. Well, that's not I/O, but there you go, your power button. There's also a vent up top, and you can add fans up here if you choose to, but I found no matter how much I pressed the system, I had no problem with airflow. Now what you see right here is a USB 3.0 port, but the I/O does not support it on this case. So that's kind of weird. The I/O on the back is pretty basic, very bare bones, but for most gamers, if that's all you're doing is gaming, you're not going to have any problem whatsoever. Plenty of ports for the 3070, and as you see here, this is where I added my personal Wi-Fi card. So now everybody's favorite subject, what's going on in the rear? Well, as you can tell, it's not the prettiest cable management, but it's actually very effective. So what do I mean by that? Now, first and foremost, this case. I love the fact that there's a cutout right here because a lot of pre-builts don't actually do this. Now, what I need is access to the backplate if I need to, say, replace the CPU water block with maybe an AIO or another custom water-cooled CPU water block. This access is golden, so I absolutely love this. Now, all of these cables here are neatly tied down, yes, and there's actually a lot of slack with these cables here as well. So if you need to add any other extra peripherals inside the case, you have plenty of cable length in order to do that. You have your hub right here for fan control and RGB. So yeah, this is very functional. And as you can see, this dust filter has been doing its job very nicely as well. There's also a bottom air filter as well, so that helps to reduce all of the dust, except the fact that there's really no fans here, so except for the fan on the PSU. I mean, what else is there to say? It's a pre-built PC, yes, all right? Normally, people made fun of pre-built PCs. This one, it's kind of hard to make fun of at $2,049 with this style of hardware. So let's recap. an 11700KF processor. So the KF, you know, go ahead and look all those up, but it doesn't have integrated graphics on the CPU. It includes a 3070, so who cares, right? 16 gigs of RAM, perfectly fine for gaming. I will argue that later on this year, going into next year, probably 32 gigs, in my opinion, will be the minimum for decent gaming. So you're not swapping information between your RAM and your SSD and NVMe drives too much during gaming. But it has 2 slots. Just pop in new RAM, easy as that. This RTX 3070 is great for gaming at 1080p, at 1440p. For video editing, it's a blast because it has CUDA. So things like DaVinci Resolve, excellent for rendering things using CUDA. Overall, this PC has been silent as well. So no matter what game I played, no matter what video editing I was doing, it was always whisper quiet, just like it is now. So whatever default fan curve they had on there, that's what I left it at. I have very little to complain about this PC. It's smartly done in terms of their manufacturing with these fittings to keep costs low. It will be a bit of an issue if you do want to upgrade this custom loop to something you want to do on the personal side. One, because it's aluminum, so always keep that in mind. You have 2 main metals when it comes to custom loops, copper and aluminum. Most AIOs are made of aluminum, so many people are familiar with working with aluminum when it comes to, you know, cooling your CPU. And then when it comes to this GPU, you know, this is also aluminum as well. So everything in here is aluminum. If you do want to upgrade, say to a different CPU water block, you have to find an aluminum one because you have an aluminum radiator, aluminum GPU water block, so just be careful with that. And then of course, this radiator is actually kind of connected in a weird way to the distro plate right here as well. So just keep that in mind, that this is not really a system that's meant to be easily upgraded for an actual like water cooling loop, but you can pop in a different CPU processor if you want. You can, of course, add another, you know, an upgraded GPU if you want to do that, and then just remove that from the loop. Yes, you can do all kinds of things. But overall, like I said, I have very little to complain about this at this price point. So I might be rambling just because I have little to complain about. This is an easy recommendation, and I just have to applaud iBUYPOWER for being able to put together a system like this at this price point. So if you guys do have any questions at all, put them in the comment section below. And other than that, stay tuned for another video where I will be putting this against another PC build as well. So other than that, stay safe, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.